The three hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are two types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
Hold on.
No. For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking for the World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that said Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
This is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden? Very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind, don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump...
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse me.
This is a Senate. This is a
He said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself. Let me go to April the 2nd. You're a part of this, the president has dabbled in meme coin. He had the DOJ disband the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. His son recently launched the Executive Branch Club, a private club with $500,000 memberships here in D.C. Any of this seem like it might be a problem, might be profiteering from the office, and maybe you and your ethics team might be concerned about these conflicts of interest, your own and the president and his family? Yes or no? Any concerns?
What I would be concerned about in Pennsylvania are all the child sex cases that we've prosecuted, all the CSAM cases that we've prosecuted.
Did you hear my question? I asked the witness to actually answer questions that are asked.
Congresswoman Dean.
Chairman?
Please let the witness answer the question.
She didn't. And I would like to ask you one more question. You're not just complicit in this, you're actively helping and profiting. Isn't it true that on April the 2nd, the same day that Trump announced his chaotic tariff regime that plummeted the stock market, you sold more than $1 million worth of your shares in Trump Media stock? Trump Media stock fell 13% in the following days. Seems you avoided that loss. Well done. I yield back.
May I answer that, Chairman? I complied with my ethics, and yeah, I would take a class in financial literacy if you think I profited from that, because I lost a tremendous amount of money. Congresswoman, and also on page 25 of my SJ2, it lists my involvement with Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Thank you.
What you just watched wasn't a procedural squabble. It was a window into why ethics, disclosure, and trust matter at the highest levels of government. Representative Madeleine Dean pressed Pam Bondi on a very specific and consequential sequence: Bondi's paid work for Qatar, whether that engagement required registration under foreign agent rules, and whether she properly disclosed that relationship during her confirmation. Bondi's answers, a mix of partial admission, deflection, and appeals to confidentiality, confidentiality left the central issue unresolved in front of the American people. Did a nominee who would become the nation's top law enforcement official fully disclose and account for a foreign invasion that could create at least the appearance of conflicted loyalties? A few concrete things matter here beyond the heated language. When a former private lawyer takes on work for a foreign government, that work must be evaluated under the Foreign Agents Registration Act and the federal ethics rules that apply to nominees and officials. Registration and disclosure aren't bureaucratic trivia. They exist so the public and Congress can see whether a public servant's past clients create conflicts that might require recusal, extra scrutiny, or limits on certain duties. In the hearing, Dean forced the issue into daylight. Bondi affirmed she represented Qatar and later pointed to an entry in her ethics filing. She referenced page 25 of her SJ2, but Dean said that disclosure didn't appear in the materials presented to senators during confirmation. That gap, whether an item was in the paperwork senators actually reviewed, is the functional problem because confirmations depend on accurate and complete disclosures. Equally important is how Bondi managed the questioning. Rather than squarely addressing whether the disclosure was made and whether she recused herself when appropriate, she repeatedly shifted to other topics: defensive claims about prosecutorial work, a refusal to discuss confidential Office of Legal Counsel advice, and counterattacks about competence and personal insults. That pattern isn't unusual in political hearings, but it does illustrate how evasions work. By changing the frame and evoking confidentiality, a nominee can fend off detailed scrutiny without resolving whether there's an ethical concern. For a Justice Department leader, candor on recusal and disclosure is essential because the public must trust that legal decisions are driven by law and evidence, not by past commercial ties. The episode also touched on related ethics flags that deserve public attention: references to outside financial activity and timing of stock trades, the revolving door between private paid work and public office, and the broader optics of advising foreign principals while later serving in U.S. law enforcement. Even if every transaction and engagement was technically legal, the cumulative effect matters. Patterns of late or incomplete disclosure, or even the perception that a public official benefited financially from close political alignment, corrode public confidence. That's why many legal ethics regimes don't stop at legality. They demand transparency to preserve legitimacy. There's a practical public policy lesson here that goes beyond personalities. Ethics rules and processes exist because a functioning democracy depends on perceived impartiality from those who enforce the law. When the head of the Justice Department is seen deflecting rather than documenting, it creates two predictable outcomes. Attorneys and prosecutors may worry about politicization, and ordinary citizens may conclude the system protects insiders. Neither outcome is acceptable. Oversight hearings are supposed to clear the air. When they don't, the remedy must be clearer reporting, binding disclosure requirements, and enforceable recusal rules, not more talking points. Finally, this is a human issue, not an abstract one. These procedures matter because people's lives and liberties hinge on fair application of the law. When officials flout, hide, or obscure relevant ties, they undermine the credibility of prosecutions and weaken protections for victims and whistleblowers. Representative Dean's directness reflected that reality. Transparency is the first step toward accountability, and accountability is the condition under which justice actually works. If you care about preserving impartial law enforcement and restoring trust in our institutions, take 3 simple steps right now. Read your senators and representatives' voting record on ethics and disclosure reforms. Ask them to require full, certified disclosure of foreign engagements for nominees to top justice positions, and share this video so more people understand why these procedural details are anything but minor. Transparency isn't a partisan preference. It's the basic currency of a healthy democracy.